The tone she'd stood in the shadows of the Lincoln Memorial at 5:47 a.m. on a sunny Tuesday morning, watching through binoculars as suspicious figures moved equipment into the Capitol building's service tunnels. 6 months earlier, she had been escorted off Marine Base Quantico in handcuffs, her career destroyed by a single moment of alleged insubordination that had cost her everything she'd worked for. Now, as she watched what appeared to be the final preparations for a coordinated attack on the heart of American democracy, Anna realized that her disgrace might have been the very thing that positioned her to save thousands of lives. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from. If you're enjoying this, don't miss out. Subscribe now for more. The woman they'd called unstable, unreliable, and unfit for service was about to prove that sometimes the people society discards are exactly the ones it needs most. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Virginia landscape as Anna Brown walked through Arlington National Cemetery, her civilian clothes feeling foreign after 8 years in Marine dress blues. It was exactly 6 months since her discharge, but the memory of that final day at Quantico remained as sharp as broken glass in her mind. Anna had been born in Prague to a Czech mother and American father, immigrating to the United States when she was 12. Her accent had mostly faded over the years, but it still emerged when she was angry or emotional, something that had marked her as different from day one in the Marines. At 26, she stood 5'6", with dark hair and intense green eyes that seemed to see through people rather than at them. Her European directness, combined with an analytical mind that questioned everything, had made her both valuable and problematic throughout her military career. She had excelled at intelligence analysis, earning commendations for her ability to spot patterns that others missed and predict threats before they materialized. Her superiors praised her technical skills while simultaneously finding her personality abrasive. Anna didn't engage in the casual camaraderie that bonded military units. She didn't laugh at the right jokes or defer to authority when she believed they were making mistakes. Most dangerously, she had an almost compulsive need to speak truth to power, regardless of the consequences. The incident that ended her career had occurred during a routine briefing about security protocols for a congressional delegation visit. Anna had identified what she believed were significant vulnerabilities in the proposed protection plan, gaps that could be exploited by anyone with basic knowledge of the facility layout. When she raised her concerns, Captain Morrison had dismissed them as overthinking, telling her to stick to her assigned analysis rather than questioning operational decisions. Anna should have let it go. She should have filed her concerns through proper channels and accepted whatever decision came down from above. Instead, her European directness and fierce protective instincts had taken over. She had stood up in front of the entire briefing room and stated flatly that the current plan would get people killed, that Morrison was more concerned with staying on schedule than keeping the delegation safe, and that she would not participate in what she considered criminal negligence. The room had gone silent. Morrison's face had turned red, then white. Within an hour, Anna was facing charges of insubordination, disrespect to a superior officer, and conduct unbecoming. The investigation that followed revealed a pattern of what her commanders termed problematic behavior. Her tendency to challenge decisions, her failure to integrate socially with her unit, her habit of working outside normal channels when she believed urgent action was required. The irony was that Anna had been right about the security vulnerabilities. 2 weeks after her discharge, the delegation visit had been quietly canceled due to what officials termed revised threat assessments. By then, it was too late for Anna. Her military career was over, her security clearance revoked, her future in ruins. The discharge had been classified as general under honorable conditions. Not quite a court-martial, but devastating enough to destroy her prospects in any security-related field. She had lost her apartment, her car, and most of her friends. The woman who had dedicated 8 years to protecting her adopted country was now unemployable in the only field where her skills mattered. Walking through Arlington that sunny morning, Anna stopped at the grave of a Marine she had known in Afghanistan, a young man named David Chen, who had died when an IED destroyed his convoy. David had been 22, full of dreams about college and starting a family. Anna knelt beside his headstone and whispered an apology she'd been carrying for months. She had been analyzing intelligence reports the day David's convoy was hit, had identified patterns in enemy movement that suggested an ambush was likely. But her warnings had been dismissed as speculation, her request for route changes denied by officers who found her conclusions inconvenient. When David and 3 others died exactly where and when Anna had predicted, she had sworn that she would never again let bureaucracy and ego cost lives. That oath had ultimately led to her downfall at Quantico, but as she stood in the cemetery surrounded by the graves of heroes, Anna felt no regret about the principles that had destroyed her career. She had chosen truth over comfort, conscience over compliance. The cost had been everything she valued, but she would make the same choice again. What Anna didn't know as she walked back to her small apartment in Arlington was that her discharge had been noted by people who valued exactly the qualities that had made her problematic in the Marines. Her willingness to challenge authority, her analytical brilliance, her complete inability to ignore threats even when acknowledging them was inconvenient. These traits that had ended her military career were about to make her the most important civilian in Washington, D.C. The sunny morning was perfect for walking, and Anna had nowhere else to be. Anna's apartment in Arlington was a study in organized minimalism. The one-bedroom unit contained only the essentials: a laptop computer, stacks of newspapers and printed articles, a pull-up bar in the doorway, and walls covered with maps, timeline charts, and news clippings connected by colored string like a detective's investigation board. To an outside observer, it might have looked like the workspace of someone losing their grip on reality. To Anna, it was simply how she processed the world. Without a security clearance or military credentials, Anna had been forced to find work wherever she could. She cleaned offices at night, delivered food during lunch hours, and worked weekend shifts at a security company that monitored shopping mall cameras. The jobs paid enough to cover rent and basic expenses, but they were mind-numbing work for someone whose brain was wired to analyze complex intelligence patterns and predict emerging threats. Her real work happened during the hours between jobs. Anna had discovered that being unemployable in official intelligence circles meant she was free to investigate things that active duty analysts couldn't touch due to political sensitivities or bureaucratic constraints. She spent her free time monitoring open-source intelligence, tracking social media patterns, analyzing public records, and following connections that official agencies might overlook or choose to ignore. Her Czech mother, Elena, called twice a week from Prague, her voice heavy with worry and disappointment. Elena had emigrated to give Anna better opportunities, had worked multiple jobs to support Anna's education and dreams of military service. Now her daughter was cleaning toilets and delivering sandwiches, wasting talents that had once earned commendations from Marine Corps generals. "Anna Milachku," Elena would say, using the Czech endearment that meant darling, "you must stop this obsession with finding problems everywhere. You must find normal work, normal life. This intelligence work, it destroyed your career already." But Anna couldn't stop. Her mind was programmed to see patterns, to identify threats, to connect dots that others missed. Even working minimum-wage jobs, she found herself analyzing the buildings she cleaned, noting security weaknesses and emergency protocols. When delivering food to government offices, she observed foot traffic patterns, identified key personnel, and mentally cataloged vulnerabilities that kept her awake at night. The investigation board in her apartment had grown over the months since her discharge. Anna had been tracking what she believed was a coordinated campaign of surveillance and probing activities around Washington's critical infrastructure. It had started with minor incidents: unauthorized individuals attempting to access federal buildings, suspicious behavior near power stations, unusual activity around transportation hubs. Individually, each incident could be explained away as coincidence or routine security concerns. Together, they formed a pattern that made Anna's trained analytic mind scream warnings. We've invested considerable effort in bringing you this story. If you find it engaging, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. Now, let's return to the narrative. She had tried to report her findings through official channels, calling the FBI tip line, contacting her former supervisors, even attempting to reach congressional staffers who might take her concerns seriously. But Anna Brown, discharged Marine with no current credentials and a history of problematic behavior, was not someone official Washington wanted to hear from. Her calls went unreturned, her emails were ignored, and her written reports disappeared into bureaucratic black holes. The isolation was crushing. Anna had never been good at forming personal relationships, but her military career had provided structure, purpose, and a sense of belonging. Now she existed in a liminal space between civilian and military life, trusted by neither world, valuable to no one. Her few attempts at dating had ended badly when potential partners learned about her discharge or witnessed her compulsive need to analyze every security risk in their environment. On weekends, Anna would often find herself at the Capitol building, ostensibly as a tourist, but actually conducting what she thought of as personal reconnaissance. She would walk the grounds, observe security procedures, and note changes in protocols or personnel. It was during one of these visits that she first noticed the pattern of suspicious individuals who seemed to be conducting their own surveillance of the building. They were good, professional in their movements, careful not to linger in any one location, skilled at blending into the crowds of tourists and staffers. But Anna's European background gave her an advantage in spotting them. She recognized subtle behavioral cues that American-trained security personnel might miss, cultural markers that suggested these individuals were not typical tourists or casual observers. Anna began photographing these suspicious individuals, tracking their movements, documenting their activities. She cross-referenced their faces with social media profiles, reverse-searched their images, and slowly began building dossiers on what she believed was a surveillance network operating around the Capitol building. Her apartment wall filled with photographs, timestamps, and movement patterns. Anna knew she was walking a dangerous line between legitimate concern and paranoid obsession, but she also knew that her analytical training had never failed her before. Something was building in Washington, something that official channels were missing or choosing to ignore. The sunny days of late spring had given way to the heat of early summer, and Anna could feel time running out. The tone she heard a Thursday evening in June while she was working her night shift at the Meridian office complex in downtown D.C. She was emptying trash cans on the 15th floor when she overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. Two men in expensive suits were speaking in what Anna recognized as Arabic, their voices low but carrying in the empty hallway. Her 4 years of language training at the Defense Language Institute had included intensive Arabic study, a skill that had made her valuable in intelligence analysis, but was now just another reminder of her destroyed career. As she continued her cleaning routine, moving slowly to avoid drawing attention, Anna translated fragments of their conversation that sent ice through her veins. They were discussing timing, coordination, and what sounded like final preparations for something called Operation Dawn. References to the building and maximum impact suggested a target of significant importance. Most chilling was their discussion of the senator's schedule and ensuring the full session would be present. Anna's mind raced as she processed the implications. A full Senate session at the Capitol building would represent hundreds of lawmakers, staff members, and security personnel in a single location. If someone was planning an attack during such a session, the casualties could be catastrophic, potentially decapitating the American government in a single coordinated strike. She finished her cleaning duties on autopilot, her training taking over while her conscious mind analyzed what she had heard. These men were not tourists or casual observers. Their conversation had the operational tenor of final planning stages, the careful precision of individuals implementing a long-prepared strategy. Back in her apartment, Anna spread out building schematics she had acquired through public records requests and began cross-referencing them with the surveillance patterns she had documented over previous months. The Meridian office complex housed several consulting firms with government contracts, including security and infrastructure companies that would have detailed knowledge of federal building layouts and protection protocols. Anna spent the night connecting dots that painted an increasingly terrifying picture. The suspicious individuals she had been tracking weren't random surveillance operatives. They were part of a coordinated intelligence-gathering operation designed to map security vulnerabilities around the Capitol complex. The conversations she had overheard suggested they were now moving from reconnaissance to implementation phases. The next morning, Anna called the FBI tip line again, this time with specific details about what she had overheard. The agent who took her call was polite but dismissive. When Anna explained her background and current employment status, "Ma'am, we appreciate your concern, but we get dozens of calls every day about suspicious conversations. Without more concrete evidence or credible sources, there's not much we can investigate." Anna tried explaining her intelligence training, her analytical background, her months of documented surveillance, but she could hear the agent's interest waning. To official Washington, she was just another paranoid civilian reporting overheard conversations that probably had innocent explanations. Frustrated but undeterred, Anna decided to expand her surveillance operations. She began following the individuals she had identified, documenting their movements, photographing their meetings, and building a comprehensive picture of what appeared to be a terrorist cell operating in plain sight in the nation's capital. The work was dangerous and exhausting. Anna had no official authority, no backup, and no resources beyond her own determination and analytical skills. She was essentially conducting a one-woman counter-terrorism operation while working multiple minimum-wage jobs to pay her rent. Her surveillance revealed a network of at least 12 individuals who appeared to be conducting systematic reconnaissance of federal buildings, transportation hubs, and critical infrastructure throughout the Washington area. They met regularly at different locations, rotated their activities to avoid establishing patterns, and demonstrated operational security measures that suggested professional training. Anna documented everything meticulously, building case files that would have impressed her former supervisors at Quantico. She tracked license plates, identified meeting locations, recorded behavioral patterns, and cross-referenced her findings with open-source intelligence about known terrorist organizations and their methodologies. The investigation consumed her life completely. Anna stopped socializing entirely, ignored her mother's increasingly worried phone calls, and devoted every moment of free time to tracking what she believed was an imminent threat to American democracy. Her apartment wall became a complex web of photographs, timelines, and analytical charts that would have looked familiar to anyone who had worked in military intelligence centers. Sleep became elusive as Anna's mind raced through possible attack scenarios and prevention strategies.
She knew that professional terrorist operations typically involved months or years of planning, careful reconnaissance, and precise timing to achieve maximum impact. Based on her observations, this network appeared to be in the final stages of preparation for something catastrophic. The sunny summer days felt ominous as Anna realized that her unofficial investigation had uncovered something that official intelligence agencies were missing or ignoring. She was a discharged Marine with no credibility, no authority, and no way to convince anyone in power that disaster was approaching. But Anna had never been good at accepting defeat, and she wasn't about to start now.
By mid-July, Anna's investigation had reached a critical mass of evidence that kept her awake at night. Her surveillance had revealed that the terrorist network was conducting what appeared to be final reconnaissance missions, timing security shift changes, and mapping evacuation routes around the Capitol complex. The operational indicators she had been trained to recognize in Afghanistan and Syria were now manifesting in her own backyard. Anna's attempts to alert official authorities had become increasingly desperate and increasingly futile. She had called every government agency she could think of: FBI, Capitol Police, Secret Service, Department of Homeland Security. But her lack of official credentials and history of problematic behavior meant her warnings were dismissed as the paranoid delusions of an unstable former Marine. The breaking point came when Anna managed to identify the apparent leader of the terrorist cell, a man she had been tracking for weeks who went by the name Omar Hassan. Through careful surveillance and open-source research, she discovered that Hassan had entered the United States 6 months earlier on a student visa, claiming to be pursuing graduate studies in engineering at George Washington University. However, Anna's investigation revealed that Hassan had never attended classes and was instead spending his time conducting sophisticated surveillance of government facilities. Armed with Hassan's identity and documented evidence of his activities, Anna made one final attempt to work through official channels. She requested a meeting with Agent Sarah Martinez at the FBI's Washington field office, presenting her case with military precision and analytical rigor that should have impressed any intelligence professional. Agent Martinez listened politely as Anna laid out her evidence. Photographs of Hassan and his associates conducting surveillance, documented patterns of reconnaissance activities, overheard conversations about operational timing, and analytical assessments of likely attack vectors. The presentation was thorough, professional, and terrifying in its implications. "Miss Brown," Martinez said when Anna finished, "I appreciate the effort you've put into this investigation, but I have some concerns about your methodology and conclusions. First, surveillance photography conducted by unauthorized civilians raises significant legal issues. Second, your interpretation of overheard conversations could be influenced by pre-existing assumptions. Most importantly, your military discharge record indicates a history of seeing threats where none exist." Anna felt her European directness taking over, the same bluntness that had destroyed her Marine career. "Agent Martinez, with respect, I have 8 years of intelligence analysis experience and a proven track record of threat identification. The patterns I've documented are consistent with pre-attack reconnaissance activities. If you ignore this intelligence and people die, their blood will be on your hands." Martinez's expression hardened. "Miss Brown, I'm going to be very clear with you. If you continue this unauthorized surveillance activity, you could face charges for stalking, harassment, or interfering with federal law enforcement operations. I strongly advise you to cease these activities and focus on rebuilding your civilian life." Anna left the FBI building feeling more isolated and desperate than ever. The system she had served faithfully for 8 years had not only rejected her warnings, but threatened her with prosecution for trying to protect innocent lives. Her Czech mother's voice echoed in her mind, telling her to give up this obsession and find a normal life. But Anna knew that normal life was a luxury she couldn't afford while watching a terrorist attack unfold in slow motion. That evening, Anna sat in her apartment staring at the investigation board that covered her walls. Months of careful documentation, hundreds of hours of surveillance, analytical assessments that drew on years of professional training, all of it dismissed by authorities who saw her as a problem rather than a resource. She thought about David Chen, the young Marine whose death she had predicted and failed to prevent. She thought about the congressional delegation whose lives she had tried to protect, earning a discharge for her efforts. She thought about the thousands of people who worked in and around the Capitol building, going about their daily lives while a coordinated attack took shape around them. Anna made a decision that night that would either save lives or destroy what remained of her future. If official channels wouldn't act on her intelligence, she would act on it herself. She began planning what military strategists called direct action, unilateral intervention to neutralize a threat when traditional command structures had failed. Her plan was simple in concept but incredibly dangerous in execution. Anna would have to infiltrate the terrorist network, gather conclusive evidence of their attack plans, and then either disrupt the operation herself or force official authorities to acknowledge the threat through undeniable proof. The sunny July days were growing shorter, and Anna's surveillance suggested that whatever Operation Dawn involved, it was scheduled to coincide with the upcoming congressional session in early August. She had less than 2 weeks to prevent what could be the most devastating terrorist attack in American history. Anna Brown, discharged Marine, was about to become a one-woman counterterrorism operation. Anna's transformation from observer to active operator began with a decision that would have terrified her 6 months earlier. On a humid Tuesday morning in late July, she walked into a military surplus store in Alexandria and purchased equipment that turned her civilian surveillance into something approaching a covert operation. Night vision goggles, lockpicking tools, audio recording devices, climbing gear, and tactical clothing, each purchase pushed Anna further across the line from concerned citizen to unauthorized intelligence operative. She paid in cash, wore a hat that obscured her face from security cameras, and used a fake name she had borrowed from a Czech identity she had memorized years earlier during language training. Back in her apartment, Anna studied building blueprints and security protocols she had acquired through months of careful research. The Meridian office complex, where she had first overheard Omar Hassan's conversation, had become the central hub of the terrorist network's activities. If she could infiltrate Hassan's operational headquarters, she might be able to gather the conclusive evidence that would force authorities to take action. The plan Anna developed was audacious and potentially suicidal. During her night shift at the office complex, she would use her legitimate access as a cleaning contractor to plant surveillance devices in Hassan's suspected meeting locations. She would document conversations, photograph operational plans, and gather intelligence that even the most skeptical FBI agent couldn't dismiss. Anna's Czech upbringing had taught her patience and methodical preparation, qualities that now served her well as she planned what amounted to a one-woman espionage operation. She studied Hassan's movement patterns, identified security blind spots in the building, and mapped escape routes in case her surveillance was discovered. The risks were enormous. If caught, Anna would face federal charges for breaking and entering, unauthorized surveillance, and potentially terrorism-related offenses. Her discharge record would ensure that any judge would view her as an unstable former Marine whose paranoid delusions had led to criminal behavior. But the alternative, watching a terrorist attack unfold while she had the skills and knowledge to prevent it, was unacceptable. Anna's first covert operation took place on Thursday night, July 28th.
Working her normal cleaning shift, she waited until the building was empty except for security guards, then used her knowledge of the facility's layout to access areas outside her assigned cleaning route. Her lockpicking skills, learned during military training but never used in civilian life, allowed her to enter Hassan's suspected meeting room on the 12th floor. Inside, Anna found evidence that confirmed her worst fears. Detailed architectural plans of the Capitol building covered a conference table, marked with what appeared to be entry points, security stations, and evacuation routes. Photographs of congressional leaders were pinned to a bulletin board alongside what looked like scheduling information for upcoming Senate sessions. Anna worked quickly, photographing everything with a high-resolution camera while simultaneously planting audio surveillance devices in locations where they wouldn't be easily discovered. Her military training took over, turning anxiety into focused operational precision as she documented evidence that proved the terrorist plot was real and imminent. The most chilling discovery was a timeline chart that showed Operation Dawn was scheduled for August 4th, exactly 1 week away, coinciding with a special joint session of Congress called to address national security legislation. The attack would target the Capitol building when it contained the maximum number of high-value political targets. Anna's hands shook as she photographed the operational timeline, understanding that she was looking at plans for what could be the most devastating attack on American democracy since the Civil War. The level of detail and sophistication suggested months of planning by individuals with professional training and significant resources. As she prepared to leave the room, Anna heard footsteps in the hallway outside. She quickly gathered her equipment and moved toward the window where she had prepared an emergency escape route using the building's exterior maintenance ladder. Her heart hammered as she realized that discovery would mean not only her arrest but the likely acceleration of the terrorist attack. The footsteps passed by without stopping, but Anna understood that her luck wouldn't hold indefinitely. Hassan and his associates were professional operatives who would eventually notice signs of surveillance or security breaches. She had perhaps 1 or 2 more opportunities to gather intelligence before her activity would be discovered. Anna spent the rest of her shift completing her normal cleaning duties while her mind processed the implications of what she had discovered. The evidence was conclusive. A coordinated terrorist attack was planned for the Capitol building in exactly 1 week, targeting a joint congressional session that would include hundreds of lawmakers and senior government officials. Armed with photographic evidence and audio surveillance capabilities, Anna made one final attempt to work through official channels. But even as she planned her approach to federal authorities, she knew that her history of dismissed warnings made success unlikely. Anna Brown was running out of time and options, but she had never been trained to quit.
The Tone last attempt to work within the system took place on Friday morning, July 29th, at the Hart Senate Office Building. She had requested an emergency meeting with Senator Patricia Walsh, chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, presenting herself as a former Marine intelligence analyst with critical information about an imminent threat to national security. Senator Walsh's chief of staff, a polished young man named Bradley Cooper, reviewed Anna's credentials and background before the meeting. His expression grew increasingly skeptical as he read through her military discharge record and current employment status. By the time Anna was ushered into the senator's office, she could see that her credibility had already been undermined. "Ms. Brown," Senator Walsh began, her tone politely dismissive, "I understand you believe you've uncovered some sort of terrorist plot. However, I have to tell you that we receive dozens of such reports every month from well-meaning citizens who think they've discovered security threats." Anna spread her photographs across the senator's desk, clear images of the Capitol building plans, the operational timeline, the surveillance photographs of Hassan and his associates. Senator, I have documented evidence of a coordinated attack planned for August 4th. These individuals have been conducting systematic reconnaissance of the Capitol complex for months. Senator Walsh glanced at the photographs without interest. Ms. Brown, according to your file, you were discharged from the Marines for insubordination and inability to follow proper channels. This appears to be a continuation of that pattern. If you had legitimate concerns, you should have reported them to the FBI or Capitol Police. I have reported them, Anna replied, her European accent becoming more pronounced as her frustration grew. Agent Martinez at the FBI dismissed my evidence without investigation. Capitol Police told me to stop wasting their time. No one will listen because I'm a discharged Marine with no official credibility. Cooper interjected smoothly. Ms. Brown, perhaps you should consider that your concerns are being dismissed because they lack merit. Sometimes, people who've experienced trauma in military service develop patterns of seeing threats where none exist. Anna felt the familiar burn of condescension that had characterized every interaction with authority since her discharge. Sir, I have 8 years of intelligence analysis experience. I know the difference between paranoid delusion and legitimate threat assessment. These photographs show operational planning for a terrorist attack. The timeline indicates execution in 5 days. Senator Walsh stood up, signaling that the meeting was over. Ms. Brown, I'm going to be very direct with you. Your military record shows a pattern of inappropriate behavior and inability to work within established protocols. Your current accusations against what appear to be foreign nationals could constitute harassment or even hate crimes if pursued without proper evidence. The words hit Anna like physical blows. She was being dismissed not only as incredible, but as potentially criminal in her motivations. Senator, if you ignore this intelligence and people die next Thursday, how will you explain that to their families? Ms. Brown, Cooper said firmly, I think you should leave now. If you continue to harass government officials with these unfounded accusations, we'll have no choice but to refer this matter to law enforcement for investigation. Anna gathered her photographs and left the Hart Building feeling more isolated than ever. The system she had sworn to protect had not only rejected her warnings, but was now threatening her with prosecution for trying to fulfill her duty as a citizen and former service member. That afternoon, Anna made a decision that would define the rest of her life. If official channels wouldn't act on her intelligence, she would act on it herself. She began planning what military strategists called unilateral direct action, solo operations conducted outside normal command structures when traditional authorities had failed. Anna spent the day acquiring additional equipment and finalizing operational plans for what she privately called Operation Last Resort. She would infiltrate the terrorist network's final planning meeting, gather irrefutable evidence of the attack, and then either disrupt the operation herself or create such undeniable proof that authorities would be forced to act. The plan was incredibly dangerous and almost certainly illegal, but Anna had reached the point where following rules meant watching innocent people die. Her Czech grandmother had survived Nazi occupation by understanding that sometimes individual conscience must override social compliance, that some situations demanded personal courage regardless of official approval. That evening, Anna wrote a letter to her mother, explaining her decision. Maminko, she wrote, using the Czech word for mother, I know you wanted me to find a normal life after the Marines, but I cannot live normally while watching evil unfold. If something happens to me, know that I chose to act according to my conscience rather than my safety. Anna sealed the letter and placed it on her kitchen table.
In 4 days, Operation Dawn would commence, and Anna Brown would either prevent a catastrophic terrorist attack or die trying. The sunny summer evening felt like borrowed time as Anna prepared for what might be her final mission.
Anna spent the weekend of July 30th, 31st in a state of controlled anxiety that would have been familiar to any special operations soldier preparing for a high-risk mission. She had identified Monday night, August 1st, as her final opportunity to gather conclusive evidence before the terrorist attack scheduled for Thursday morning. Her surveillance had revealed that Hassan's network held their final coordination meetings on Monday evenings in the Meridian Office Complex conference room she had already penetrated. This would be her last chance to document their operational plans and either disrupt the attack or gather evidence so compelling that even the most skeptical authorities would be forced to act. Anna's preparation was methodical and thorough. She tested all her equipment multiple times, memorized building layouts and escape routes, and developed contingency plans for various scenarios, including discovery, capture, or the need to abort the mission. Her military training had taught her that successful operations depended on careful planning and the discipline to execute under pressure. The psychological preparation was more challenging than the technical aspects. Anna knew that infiltrating a terrorist cell's final planning meeting was essentially a suicide mission for someone operating alone without backup or official support. If discovered, she would face immediate execution by trained killers who couldn't afford to leave witnesses alive. On Sunday evening, Anna called her mother in Prague for what she suspected might be the last time. Elena's voice was filled with the usual mixture of love and worry that had characterized their conversations since Anna's discharge. "Anna, milachku, you sound different tonight. Are you taking care of yourself? Are you eating properly?" Anna struggled to keep her voice normal while fighting back tears. "I'm fine, Maminko. I just wanted to tell you that I love you and that everything I've done has been to honor the values you taught me." "Why are you talking like this? You're frightening me. What is happening there?" "Nothing is happening, Mama. I just wanted you to know that if something ever happens to me, it will be because I chose to do what was right rather than what was safe." The conversation ended with Elena begging Anna to visit Prague, to leave America and start fresh in a place where her past couldn't follow her. Anna promised to consider it, knowing that she would either be dead or in federal prison by the end of the week. Monday morning brought the kind of perfect summer weather that made Washington, D.C. beautiful despite its political toxicity. Anna worked her day shifts mechanically, delivering food and cleaning offices while her mind focused on the evening's mission. Every detail had been planned and rehearsed, but she knew that real operations never went exactly according to plan. At 6 p.m., Anna changed into dark clothing and began her approach to the Meridian office complex. She carried a small backpack containing surveillance equipment, lock-picking tools, and a backup communication device programmed to send emergency messages to every law enforcement agency in Washington if she failed to check in by midnight. The building's security was routine during evening hours. A single guard at the main desk who was accustomed to seeing Anna arrive for her night cleaning shift. She signed in normally, took the service elevator to the 15th floor, and began what appeared to be standard janitorial duties while actually positioning herself for the real mission. At 8:30 p.m., Anna's surveillance equipment detected voices in the 12th floor conference room. Hassan and at least 4 associates had arrived for their final coordination meeting. Anna waited until 9 p.m. to ensure they were settled, then began her descent to the target floor using the building's service stairwell. Her heart hammered as she approached the conference room, but her hands remained steady. Anna had learned in Afghanistan that fear was acceptable as long as it didn't interfere with mission execution. She activated her recording devices and carefully picked the lock on an adjacent storage room that would serve as her surveillance post. Through the shared wall, Anna could hear Hassan's voice directing the meeting in Arabic.
Her language training allowed her to follow most of the conversation, which confirmed her worst fears about the scope and timing of Operation Dawn. The attack would commence at 10 a.m. on Thursday, August 4th, when the joint congressional session was scheduled to begin. Hassan was reviewing final assignments with his team members. One would handle explosive devices planted in the building's infrastructure. Another would manage communications and coordination with what appeared to be external support elements. A third would be responsible for neutralizing Capitol Police response during the critical initial phase of the attack. Anna recorded everything while simultaneously photographing documents that Hassan was distributing to his team. The operational plan was sophisticated and thorough, clearly the product of months of professional planning by individuals with extensive training in terrorist tactics. As the meeting continued, Anna realized that she was witnessing the final preparation phase of what would be the most devastating attack on American democracy in the nation's history. Thursday morning would bring coordinated explosions, armed assault, and mass casualties unless she could somehow prevent it. The weight of responsibility was crushing, but Anna had never been trained to quit when lives depended on her actions.
The Tone surveillance mission took a catastrophic turn at 10:47 p.m. when Hassan abruptly stopped speaking mid-sentence and said something in Arabic that made her blood freeze. "We have a listener." The conference room fell silent, except for the sound of chairs scraping against the floor as Hassan's associates moved to secure the area. Anna's military training kicked in immediately, her mind calculating distances, escape routes, and survival options, while her body remained perfectly still in the storage room. Hassan's voice carried through the wall with deadly calm. "Someone has been monitoring our activities. Search every room on this floor. Find them." Anna heard footsteps moving through the corridor outside, methodical and professional as the terrorists systematically checked each office and storage area. She had perhaps 2 minutes before they reached her hiding place, not enough time to reach the stairwell or service elevator without being seen. Her only option was the emergency fire escape outside the window of the storage room. Anna quickly gathered her surveillance equipment while listening to the approaching search. The building's exterior was a sheer drop of 12 stories, but the fire escape provided a potential route to safety if she could reach it without being detected. Anna forced the window open as quietly as possible and climbed onto the narrow metal platform of the fire escape. The night air was humid and still, carrying sounds from the street below that seemed impossibly distant. She began descending the ladder system, moving as quickly as she dared while trying to remain silent. Behind her, she heard the storage room door being forced open, followed by Hassan's voice shouting orders in Arabic. Within seconds, the window she had used for escape was filled with the silhouette of an armed man scanning the fire escape for movement. Anna pressed herself against the building's exterior wall, hoping the darkness would conceal her position, while her heart hammered loud enough that she was certain her pursuers could hear it. The terrorist on the 12th floor swept the area with what appeared to be a tactical flashlight, its beam passing within inches of Anna's position. "She's on the fire escape," the man called back to Hassan, moving down toward the street level. Anna heard multiple sets of footsteps rushing toward the stairwells inside the building as Hassan's team moved to intercept her at ground level. She had perhaps 3 minutes to reach the street and disappear before trained killers surrounded the building's exits. The fire escape ladder was slick with humidity and age, making each step treacherous as Anna descended as quickly as possible. Her military training had included fast roping and emergency building evacuation, but those exercises had been conducted with safety equipment and backup support. Now she was alone in the darkness, running for her life while carrying evidence that could prevent a terrorist attack.
At the 8th floor, Anna made a decision that would have seemed insane to anyone without special operations training. Instead of continuing down the fire escape where Hassan's team expected her to go, she forced open an 8th floor window and climbed back into the building. The 8th floor housed a law firm that Anna had cleaned during previous shifts. She knew the layout, the security systems, and most importantly, the building's internal elevator shaft that maintenance workers used for equipment transport. If she could reach the service elevator, she might be able to descend to the parking garage level and escape through the building's loading dock. Anna moved through the darkened law offices by memory, avoiding areas with motion sensor lighting while making her way toward the service corridor. Behind her, she could hear Hassan's men searching the fire escape, their voices growing more frustrated as they failed to locate their target. The service elevator was an old freight system that Anna had observed during her cleaning duties but never used. She forced the mechanical doors open and found herself facing a vertical shaft with cables and counterweight systems that offered a potential route to the garage level if she was willing to climb down 30 feet of elevator machinery. Anna had learned rope and cable techniques during her Marine training, skills that had seemed like academic exercises at the time, but now represented the difference between life and death. She wrapped her legs around the main cable and began descending hand over hand toward the parking garage, her muscles screaming from the strain while her mind focused on survival. Above her, she heard Hassan's voice echoing through the building's stairwells as his team systematically searched each floor. They had discovered that their surveillance target was no longer on the fire escape and were now conducting a floor-by-floor sweep of the entire building. Anna reached the garage level with her hands raw and her shoulders on fire from the cable descent. She forced the elevator doors open and found herself in the building's underground parking area, surrounded by concrete pillars and expensive cars that belonged to the building's professional tenants. The loading dock exit was 50 yards away, but Anna knew that Hassan's team would have positioned sentries at all ground-level exits.
Anna crouched behind a concrete pillar in the parking garage, her mind racing through escape options while listening for footsteps that would indicate Hassan's team had discovered her location. The loading dock exit was visible across the garage, but approaching it would mean crossing an open area where she would be exposed to anyone monitoring the building's exits. Her salvation came from an unexpected source, the building's automated sprinkler system. Anna's surveillance equipment included a small electronic device designed to trigger fire safety systems, originally intended for creating diversions during covert operations. She activated the device and placed it near a smoke detector, then moved to a position near the loading dock exit. Within 30 seconds, fire alarms began blaring throughout the building, while sprinkler systems activated on every floor. Emergency lighting illuminated the garage as the building's safety protocols automatically unlocked all exits and activated evacuation procedures. The chaos was exactly what Anna needed. Hassan's team would be forced to evacuate with everyone else or risk being trapped in a building that emergency responders would soon surround. Anna used the confusion to reach the loading dock, where she slipped out into the alley behind the Meridian office complex. Once on the street, Anna forced herself to walk calmly despite every instinct screaming at her to run. She was just another pedestrian evacuating the area around a building with fire alarms, nothing that would attract attention from Hassan's operatives, who were undoubtedly scanning for suspicious behavior. Anna reached her apartment at 11:43 p.m., knowing that she had perhaps hours before Hassan's network realized the scope of what she had recorded and began hunting for her with lethal intent. She immediately began uploading her surveillance recordings and photographs to multiple secure servers, ensuring that the evidence would survive even if she didn't. The intelligence she had gathered was devastating. Hassan's final coordination meeting had revealed operational details that proved Operation Dawn was scheduled for 10 a.m. on Thursday, August 4th. The attack would involve coordinated explosions in the Capitol building's infrastructure, followed by armed assault teams targeting congressional leadership during the joint session. Most chilling was Hassan's discussion of casualty estimates. The terrorists expected to kill or wound several hundred people, including a significant portion of America's congressional leadership. The attack was designed not just to cause mass casualties, but to decapitate the American government and create political chaos that could destabilize the entire democratic system. Anna spent the next 3 hours creating comprehensive intelligence packages that she sent to every law enforcement agency, news organization, and government official she could contact. FBI, Secret Service, Capitol Police, Department of Homeland Security, major television networks, newspaper editors, congressional offices, everyone received detailed evidence packages containing audio recordings, photographs, and analytical assessments of the imminent terrorist attack. But Anna knew from months of experience that her credibility was so damaged that even conclusive evidence might be dismissed as elaborate fabrication by an unstable former Marine. She needed to create undeniable proof that would force authorities to act regardless of their opinion of her reliability. Her solution was characteristically direct and dangerous. Anna decided to deliver evidence directly to the terrorists' target, forcing Capitol Police to confront the threat whether they believed her or not. She would position herself at the Capitol building on Thursday morning, armed with detailed intelligence about the attack, and either help security forces prevent it or die trying. The plan was essentially suicidal for someone operating alone, but Anna had reached the point where personal survival was less important than preventing mass casualties. Her Czech grandmother had taught her that some situations demanded individual courage regardless of the consequences, that history was shaped by people willing to act when institutions failed. Anna spent Wednesday preparing for what she knew would be her final mission. She cleaned her apartment, paid her bills, and wrote detailed letters to her mother and former Marine colleagues explaining her actions. She wasn't planning to die, but she understood that successful counterterrorism operations often required operators to accept mortal risk in service of larger objectives. On Wednesday evening, Anna received a phone call that changed everything. The voice was professional, controlled, and spoke with an authority that made her heart race. "Ms. Brown, this is Deputy Director James Crawford from the FBI's Counterterrorism Division. We received your intelligence packages, and we need to talk. Can you meet us at the Hoover Building in 1 hour?" Anna's hands shook as she processed the implications. After months of dismissal and rejection, someone in official Washington was finally taking her warning seriously. But she also knew that this could be a trap, that Hassan's network might have infiltrated law enforcement communications, or that authorities were planning to arrest her for unauthorized surveillance activities. "Deputy Director, how do I know this isn't a setup? How do I know you're not planning to arrest me instead of investigating the terrorist threat?" Crawford's response was measured but urgent. "Ms. Brown, because we have independent confirmation of Hassan's network from other sources, your intelligence fills gaps in our investigation that we couldn't complete through normal channels. We need your help to prevent this attack."
The tone arrived at the FBI's J. Edgar Hoover building at 9:30 p.m. on Wednesday, August 3rd, carrying a backpack containing copies of all her surveillance evidence and wearing the kind of determined expression that had characterized her entire military career. The building's imposing facade looked different at night, less like a symbol of federal authority and more like a fortress preparing for war. Deputy Director Crawford met her personally in the lobby, a gesture that immediately signaled the seriousness with which the Bureau was now treating her intelligence.
Crawford was a tall man in his 50s with graying hair and the kind of intense focus that Anna recognized from senior military commanders who understood that lives depended on their decisions. "Miss Brown," Crawford said as they walked toward the elevator, "I owe you an apology. Agent Martinez's handling of your initial reports was inadequate, and we may have lost valuable time because of bureaucratic failures." Anna's response was characteristically direct. "Deputy Director, apologies won't prevent tomorrow's attack. What matters now is whether you have the resources and commitment to stop Hassan's network before they kill hundreds of people." The elevator carried them to the 5th floor, where Anna found herself in a high-security briefing room filled with agents, analysts, and officials from multiple federal agencies. The walls were covered with intelligence charts, surveillance photographs, and tactical maps that looked remarkably similar to the investigation board in Anna's apartment. Crawford gestured toward the assembled team. "Miss Brown, meet the Joint Terrorism Task Force that's been tracking Hassan's network from multiple angles. Your surveillance filled critical gaps in our intelligence picture, particularly regarding timing and operational specifics." Agent Sarah Martinez was present, her expression carefully neutral as she nodded acknowledgement to Anna. The irony wasn't lost on either woman. The intelligence that Martinez had dismissed as paranoid delusion was now driving a major counterterrorism operation involving hundreds of federal agents. Special Agent in Charge Robert Chen, who led the task force, briefed Anna on their current intelligence picture. Hassan's network was indeed planning a coordinated attack on the Capitol building, but the FBI had been tracking them through different methods that hadn't revealed the operational timeline or specific target details that Anna had uncovered. "Your surveillance recordings provided the final pieces we needed," Chen explained. "We now know that Hassan plans to detonate explosives in the Capitol's infrastructure at exactly 10 a.m. tomorrow, followed by armed assault teams targeting the joint congressional session. Without your intelligence, we would have been responding to an attack rather than preventing one." Anna felt a mixture of vindication and overwhelming relief. Months of isolation, dismissal, and professional destruction had finally led to this moment, where her warnings were not only believed, but had become the foundation for a major law enforcement operation. Crawford outlined the Bureau's response. "We have tactical teams positioned around Hassan's known locations, surveillance assets monitoring all suspected network members, and coordination with Capitol Police to secure the target area. The attack will be prevented, and the terrorists will be arrested before they can harm anyone." But Anna's analytical training identified a critical vulnerability in the FBI's approach. "Deputy Director, what about Hassan's external support network? My surveillance indicated coordination with outside elements that haven't been identified. If you arrest the primary team without neutralizing their support structure, they might have backup operatives ready to execute alternative attacks." The room fell silent as Anna's observation highlighted a gap in the FBI's operational planning. Chen consulted his briefing materials and acknowledged the concern. "Miss Brown, you're right. We've focused on Hassan's immediate network without adequately investigating their external connections." Anna had anticipated this problem and had prepared a solution that would once again require her to operate outside normal protocols. "I can help identify the external network, but it would require me to maintain my surveillance activities through tomorrow morning. If Hassan's support team realizes their primary operation has been compromised, they might activate contingency plans that could still result in casualties." Crawford studied Anna with the kind of assessment she recognized from military leaders evaluating subordinates for dangerous assignments. "Miss Brown, what you're proposing would put you at considerable personal risk. Hassan's network will be looking for whoever compromised their operation, and they won't hesitate to kill anyone they identify as a threat." Anna's response was immediate and uncompromising. "Deputy Director, I've been at considerable personal risk for months while trying to prevent this attack. I'm not going to stop now when we're this close to success." The task force spent the next hour integrating Anna into their operational plan. She would maintain surveillance on suspected external network members, while FBI tactical teams moved against Hassan's primary cell. Her intelligence would help ensure that no backup operatives escaped to plan future attacks. As the briefing concluded, Crawford shook Anna's hand with genuine respect. "Miss Brown, on behalf of the Bureau and the American people, thank you for your service. Your persistence and courage may have saved hundreds of lives." Anna felt tears threatening as months of isolation and dismissal gave way to professional recognition and purpose. Thursday, August 4th, began at 4:30 a.m. for Anna Brown, who found herself in the most surreal situation of her life, sitting in an FBI command vehicle parked 3 blocks from the Capitol building, wearing official federal agent credentials and coordinating a counterterrorism operation that she had initiated through months of unauthorized surveillance. Deputy Director Crawford had positioned Anna as a special consultant to the Joint Task Force, giving her official status that protected her from legal consequences while allowing her unique knowledge of Hassan's network to guide the operation. Agent Chen briefed the tactical teams using intelligence that Anna had gathered at enormous personal risk, her surveillance recordings playing through speakers as federal agents prepared to prevent the most significant terrorist attack since 9/11. Anna's role in the final operation was both critical and dangerous. While FBI tactical teams moved to arrest Hassan and his primary cell, she would monitor suspected external network members who might attempt to execute backup plans if the main operation was compromised. Her surveillance expertise and knowledge of the terrorists' communication patterns made her invaluable for identifying contingency threats. At 6 a.m., Anna positioned herself at a coffee shop across from the Meridian office complex, watching through high-powered binoculars as FBI agents surrounded the building. She wore civilian clothes but carried official communication equipment that connected her directly to Crawford and the Tactical Command Center. The arrest operation began at 6:15 a.m. with military precision. FBI tactical teams simultaneously breached Hassan's apartment, his operational headquarters in the Meridian building, and 3 other locations where network members were sleeping. Anna watched through her surveillance equipment as Hassan was taken into custody, his shocked expression visible even from her distant observation point. But Anna's training had taught her that successful terrorist networks always prepared contingency plans, and her surveillance had identified at least 3 individuals who appeared to be external support operatives not directly connected to Hassan's immediate cell. These backup terrorists would be monitoring law enforcement communications and preparing to execute alternative attacks if the primary operation was compromised. Anna's prediction proved correct at 7:23 a.m. when she observed suspicious activity around the Capitol building's perimeter. 2 men who matched descriptions from her surveillance files were conducting what appeared to be reconnaissance of the building's eastern entrance, their behavior suggesting they were evaluating alternative access points for an improvised attack. "Crawford, this is Brown," Anna radioed to the command center. "I have visual on 2 suspected external operatives conducting surveillance of the Capitol's eastern perimeter. They appear to be assessing alternative attack vectors." Crawford's response was immediate. "Brown, maintain visual contact but do not engage. We're dispatching tactical units to your location." Anna watched the suspected terrorists through her binoculars while providing real-time intelligence to approaching FBI agents. Her months of studying these individuals' behavioral patterns allowed her to predict their movements and guide law enforcement to intercept them before they could execute any backup plans. The 2 suspects were arrested at 7:41 a.m. as they attempted to access a service entrance to the Capitol building. Subsequent investigation revealed that they were indeed backup operatives prepared to conduct a simplified attack using vehicle-borne explosives if Hassan's more sophisticated plan was discovered. By 8 a.m., the entire terrorist network had been neutralized. Hassan and 7 associates were in federal custody, their explosives and weapons secured, their detailed plans for attacking the joint congressional session completely disrupted. Anna's intelligence had not only prevented a catastrophic attack, but had helped law enforcement dismantle the entire terrorist cell before they could harm anyone. Crawford's voice crackled through Anna's radio with news that felt like vindication for months of struggle. Brown, the joint congressional session is proceeding as scheduled with enhanced security measures. Your intelligence prevented what could have been the deadliest terrorist attack in American history. Anna sat in the coffee shop, watching federal agents secure the area around the Capitol building while congressional members arrived for their session, completely unaware that they had been minutes away from a coordinated assault that would have killed hundreds of people. The sunny morning felt different now, peaceful rather than ominous, as Anna realized that her unauthorized investigation had actually succeeded. Agent Martinez approached Anna's table, her expression a mixture of professional respect and personal embarrassment. "Mrs. Brown, I owe you an apology that goes far beyond professional courtesy. My dismissal of your initial intelligence was a failure of judgment that could have cost hundreds of lives." Anna's response reflected the maturity that had developed through months of isolation and struggle. "Agent Martinez, the system worked exactly as it was designed to work. You followed protocols and procedures that exist for good reasons. The problem wasn't your judgment. It was that sometimes extraordinary situations require extraordinary responses that don't fit normal protocols." As Anna walked toward the FBI command vehicle that would take her to extensive debriefings and formal recognition ceremonies, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. 6 months earlier, she had been a discharged Marine with no credibility, no authority, and no future. Now, she was the civilian who had prevented a terrorist attack on the heart of American democracy. The sunny Thursday morning felt like the beginning of something new rather than the end of something broken. The debriefing process that followed the successful counterterrorism operation lasted 3 days and fundamentally changed Anna Brown's life in ways that would have seemed impossible during her months of isolation and dismissal. The FBI's Counterterrorism Division, Secret Service, Capitol Police, and Department of Homeland Security all wanted detailed briefings on her investigation methods, analytical processes, and the intelligence gaps that had allowed Hassan's network to operate undetected for so long. Anna found herself sitting in the same types of briefing rooms where she had once been dismissed as an unreliable former Marine. But now, her audience consisted of senior federal officials who treated her expertise with the respect it had always deserved. Deputy Director Crawford introduced her to congressional leaders whose lives she had saved, explaining how her unauthorized investigation had identified and prevented an attack that would have decapitated American democracy. Senator Patricia Walsh, who had dismissed Anna's warnings just days earlier, requested a private meeting to personally apologize for her failure to take the intelligence seriously. The conversation was awkward but necessary, highlighting the institutional barriers that had nearly allowed a catastrophic attack to succeed. "Ms. Brown," Senator Walsh said, her voice heavy with embarrassment, "I let my assumptions about your credibility override my responsibility to evaluate your intelligence objectively. Your persistence in pursuing this investigation, despite official dismissal, represents exactly the kind of individual courage that our democratic system depends on." Anna's response was characteristically direct, but not vindictive. "Senator, the system worked as designed, but the design has flaws that nearly cost hundreds of lives.
Perhaps this experience can help identify ways to ensure that legitimate intelligence isn't dismissed because of the messenger's credentials or background. The formal recognition that followed was unprecedented for a civilian who had operated outside official channels. Anna received commendations from the FBI director, a personal letter of gratitude from the president, and a congressional gold medal for her role in preventing the terrorist attack. But more meaningful to Anna was the professional vindication that came with official acknowledgement of her analytical skills and dedication. Deputy Director Crawford offered Anna a position as a special consultant to the FBI's counterterrorism division, with security clearance, official authority, and the kind of resources that would have prevented months of unauthorized investigation. The job offer represented everything Anna had wanted during her military career: respect, authority, and the opportunity to use her skills to protect innocent lives. But Anna's months of operating alone had changed her in fundamental ways. She had learned to trust her own judgment over institutional approval, to act on conscience rather than wait for official permission, and to accept personal responsibility for outcomes rather than diffuse accountability through bureaucratic processes. "Deputy Director," Anna said during their final meeting, "I'm honored by your offer, but I think I can be more effective operating outside traditional structures. The institutional constraints that made my warnings dismissible would still exist if I returned to official employment." Crawford understood her reasoning but pressed the point. "Ms. Brown, working outside official channels means operating without backup, resources, or legal protection. What you accomplished was extraordinary, but it was also incredibly dangerous and potentially illegal." Anna had given this considerable thought during her debriefing sessions. "Sir, the terrorist attack succeeded until the moment it was prevented. Official channels failed because they're designed for normal threats, not extraordinary ones. Sometimes the system needs people who operate outside it to identify what it's missing." Her decision to remain independent was influenced by calls she had received from intelligence professionals, investigative journalists, and security consultants who recognized that her success had demonstrated the value of unorthodox approaches to threat analysis. Anna's transformation from discharged Marine to recognized counterterrorism expert was complete, but her new role would be fundamentally different from anything she had previously experienced. She would operate as an independent intelligence analyst, working with official agencies when cooperation was possible, but maintaining the autonomy to pursue investigations that bureaucratic constraints might otherwise prevent. The media attention that followed her story was intense but carefully managed. Anna agreed to limited interviews that focused on the importance of persistent threat analysis and the need for institutions to remain open to warnings from unconventional sources, but she avoided publicity that might compromise her ability to conduct future investigations. 3 weeks after the prevented attack, Anna stood in her Arlington apartment, looking at walls that were now covered with thank you letters from congressional members, commendation certificates from federal agencies, and job offers from security firms around the world. But the most meaningful item was a simple email from her mother in Prague. "Anna Milachku, I always knew that your stubbornness would either destroy you or save the world. I'm glad it was the world." Anna smiled as she began planning her next investigation, analyzing intelligence patterns that suggested another potential threat was developing. Being right about one terrorist attack had given her credibility to pursue others, and Anna intended to use that credibility to protect innocent lives wherever threats emerged. The sunny summer that had nearly ended in catastrophe was giving way to autumn, and Anna Brown was finally doing the work she had always been meant to do. 6 months after preventing the Capitol Hill terrorist attack, Anna Brown stood on the observation deck of the Washington Monument, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of gold and amber. The view included the Capitol building, where hundreds of lives had been saved by her persistence, the FBI headquarters, where she now consulted regularly, and the Lincoln Memorial, where she had first spotted Hassan's surveillance activities.
Anna's life had transformed completely from the dark days following her Marine discharge. She now operated as an independent intelligence analyst with official recognition, security clearance, and a reputation that opened doors throughout the national security establishment. Federal agencies consulted her on cases that required unconventional analytical approaches, and her methods were being studied and incorporated into official counterterrorism protocols. The apartment in Arlington had been replaced by a larger space that served as both home and operational headquarters. The walls were still covered with investigation boards, but now they displayed multiple ongoing cases with official case numbers and federal agency cooperation. Anna's analytical obsession had evolved from personal compulsion into professional methodology that was saving lives on a regular basis. Her relationship with her mother had healed completely. Elena visited from Prague every few months, no longer worried about Anna's career, but proud of her daughter's transformation from discharged failure to national hero. The Czech directness that had once made Anna problematic in military structures was now recognized as exactly the quality needed for identifying threats that others missed. Anna's work had expanded beyond domestic counterterrorism into international threat analysis, consulting with European intelligence agencies that valued her linguistic skills and cultural understanding. Her ability to spot patterns that transcended national boundaries had helped prevent 3 additional terrorist plots in the 6 months following the Capitol Hill success. The professional vindication was deeply satisfying, but Anna found even greater meaning in the personal letters she received from people whose lives had been affected by her work. Congressional members who had been in the Capitol building during the planned attack, their staff members, Capitol police officers who would have faced armed terrorists, and family members who would have lost loved ones. All of them had written to express gratitude for her persistence in pursuing warnings that others had dismissed. Most meaningful was a letter from David Chen's mother, the young Marine whose death in Afghanistan had inspired Anna's oath to never let bureaucracy cost lives. Mrs. Chen had learned about Anna's story through media coverage and wrote to say that David would have been proud to know that his death had motivated someone to save so many others. Anna's transformation had also changed how institutions approached intelligence analysis from unconventional sources. The FBI had created new protocols for evaluating warnings from former military personnel, intelligence professionals, and other credible sources who might operate outside normal channels. Her success had demonstrated that valuable intelligence could come from unexpected places if institutions remained open to uncomfortable truths. Deputy Director Crawford had become a friend and regular collaborator, often calling Anna when cases required the kind of independent analysis that bureaucratic constraints made difficult for official agents. Their partnership represented a new model for cooperation between institutional authority and individual expertise that was being studied and replicated throughout the intelligence community. On this particular morning, Anna was preparing for her next major investigation. Intelligence patterns suggesting a coordinated cyber attack against American financial institutions. The threat was complex, international in scope, and exactly the kind of challenge that required her combination of analytical brilliance and willingness to operate outside conventional constraints. As Anna watched the city wake up below her, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from disgrace to recognition, from isolation to purpose. The European immigrant who had been deemed too small, too direct, and too problematic for military service had become exactly the person America needed to identify and prevent catastrophic threats. Anna's phone buzzed with a text message from Agent Martinez, who had become a close colleague and friend. "Anna, we've got reports of unusual activity around financial district buildings in 3 major cities. Your kind of pattern recognition case. Coffee at 0800 to discuss?" Anna smiled as she typed her response. "On my way. Let's see what threats we can prevent today." The sunny morning stretched ahead with unlimited possibilities for someone who had learned that being dismissed by institutions often meant being positioned to see what institutions missed. Anna Brown, the discharged Marine who had saved democracy, was ready for whatever challenge came next.
Her story had become proof that sometimes the people society discards are exactly the ones it needs most, and that persistence in the face of dismissal could literally save the world. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.